As we know tonight, President Obama will deliver his 8th and final State of the Union address. I think it's worth reflecting just for a few minutes this afternoon on what's happened in the 7 years that he's been president. We all know what the country was like when he was elected. Because the Bush administration, they were losing 800,000 jobs a month. For the first 2 months he was elected before he was sworn into office, 2 times 800,000. Devastating. But now we have 14 million private sector jobs have been created. Unemployment rate is down to 5%. 17 million Americans have health insurance that didn't have it before. Renewable energy has skyrocketed, and based on what we did right before the first of the year, it's going to even get better because they have a 7-year path forward that can plan ahead. It's going to be magnificent what happens to American renewable energy. We've also, even though we haven't done as much as should be done, we have made sure that the richest of the rich pay a little bit extra. Now, the only people that oppose the richest of the rich paying a little bit more are the Republicans in Congress. These rich people around America today, they're willing to pay a little more. That's been proven on a number of occasions with various polls that have been taken. But what we did right before the first of the year is really give tax relief to 16 million people and brought 8 million children out of poverty. That's significant. That's all part of Obama's leadership. Tax relief, we got it. 50 million Americans, 25 million children, permanent tax relief. The auto industry, what did we hear just a few days ago? The largest number of trucks and cars sold in the history of the country was sold last year. Why? Because of Obama's leadership. We can go back to things like cash for clunkers. We can go back to the prophets of doom, the Republicans. You can't help General Motors. You can't help Chrysler. And certainly, it wouldn't help Ford anyway. They were all helped significantly because of Obama's leadership. Osama bin Laden is dead. We've destroyed and degraded terrorist organizations. Of course there's more we have to do, lots more we have to do, and we're trying to do that. The historic agreements on climate change and stop Iran from getting nuclear weapons is, I've said it all, it's historic. So I hope over the next year we can build on these successes and make more progress for the middle class. The only way this can be done is if the obstruction of the Republicans stops. All these accomplishments that we've talked about here the last few minutes have only come about as a result of our overcoming the obstruction of the Republicans. They've opposed everything that President Obama has tried to do. Alleviating student debt. Of course we have to alleviate student debt. Does anyone have one of those little red badges? There it is right there. Okay, here's mine. We want people to start thinking in the red. If you're a young person or a parent trying to send your child to school, you know what this means. And we're going to work very hard and focus attention on the devastation that families and young men and women are having trying to get an education in America. It shouldn't be that way. It should be more affordable. Student loans surpass credit card debt, and that's wrong. We must chart a path to a debt-free college. So I look forward to hearing more from President Obama tonight. And the one thing I'm confident he will say, as he said before, I've tried to work with you, and if Congress can't do it, I'm going to do everything I can within my executive power to keep this country moving forward. Senator Durbin.
Thanks, Senator Reid. We're just a few days away from the Iowa caucus. I was reflecting on that for a moment. 8 years ago, I was in Iowa. I'd spent 14 days in Iowa campaigning for Barack Obama to be the nominee for President of the United States. I'd made those 14 separate trips to Iowa, Reggie Love, his personal man, told me he made 84 in the process of winning the Iowa caucus. That was the turning point for the Obama campaign. From that point forward, people took him seriously. He ultimately was elected President of the United States, and I was proud to be there for that inauguration. Hard to imagine tonight is the 8th State of the Union for President Obama and his last. I reflect on what he has brought to America, some dramatic change that was long overdue. Harry Reid has talked about the recession he faced, that he inherited from the previous president. We battled to try to create a stimulus package and turn that economy around with precious little help from the Republican side of the aisle. And then President Obama said it's time to do something about the uninsured in America. President after president had tried and failed in that effort. He succeeded without Republican help. I stand next to the man in the Senate who was more responsible than any, Harry Reid, for passing that bill. I can't tell you how many days and nights we labored over that bill and every single vote that was necessary for its passage. It has made a dramatic difference for millions of Americans. We've reduced the number of uninsured by 45%, and now the Republicans who want to repeal Obamacare, as they call it, have nothing to offer as an alternative. It is totally irresponsible on their part. I want to commend the President as well for leading us in this country toward a more open and accepting country when it comes to those in the lesbian, gay, transgender community. It is amazing, in a short period of time, the transformation that has taken place. He'll remind us tonight that our agenda is not complete. There is more to be done. In the area of criminal justice, we have a chance in the United States Senate to make history this year. There's a bill that's passed out of the Senate Judiciary Committee. It is co-sponsored by Senators Grassley and Cornyn on the Republican side, and virtually all of the Democrats on our side. It is a balanced, good bill that would reduce the level of incarceration across this country. Harry Reid has talked about reducing student debt. Our students across America are burdened with a debt that could decide their futures, and for many of them, it's a burden they'll never be able to deal with unless we come forward with help. And we have some excellent ideas from Elizabeth Warren and others. We have a lot of issues before us, but one that I visited the President on last week, I'm sure is going to come up in the days ahead, the issue of gun violence in America. The year ended with Chicago with the highest number of gun deaths of any city in the United States of America. 468 people died by gunfire in Chicago last year, more than in New York or Los Angeles. In comparison, 2,939 were wounded by guns, more than any other city. It's an indication of gun violence that needs to be brought under control. The Senate has tried and failed as recently as a few weeks ago to deal with this issue. The President is using all the authority he has to try to make this a safer nation, and we should join him in that process. And the last point, of course, I want to make is comprehensive immigration reform. I work with Senator Schumer and a group of 8 senators, Democrats and Republicans. This issue needs to be revisited. We have DACA students, those who are eligible for the DREAM Act, not being deported. Their future hangs in the balance of this presidential election. 11 million people don't know their fate in America because we have not acted on comprehensive immigration reform. That's an issue which we should face this year as well.
Senator Schumer.
Well, thank you. And like my colleagues, I'm excited for the President's speech. I'm looking forward to the President talking about the successes of the past 7 years, laying out the challenges ahead and how we face them as a country. Now, we all know that one of the greatest challenges facing the middle class in the country is the growing cost of going to college and the massive amount of debt that hangs around college graduates like an anchor. There is well over $1 trillion of student debt in this country, more than credit card debt. Who would have believed that a few years ago? And the average New Yorker, for instance, is graduating with nearly $28,000 in debt. My guest to the State of the Union tonight is Sean McAllister, who is only halfway through his education at Syracuse University and is already $30,000 in the red. Leader Reid and many other members of our caucus have brought students as their guests to the President's final State of the Union to highlight this growing problem, and we'll be gathering at 5 o'clock to talk about it. Today marks the start of what we hope will be a national campaign to pressure Republicans to join us in reducing the cost of college debt and the debt load that graduates face. Named for the financial situation that far too many students find themselves in, we're calling it the In the Red campaign. And our caucus next week will introduce a series of proposals to reduce the student loan debt in the future. We're confident that the President will touch on this growing crisis in his speech tonight. He's been a fighter to make college more affordable for the middle class and is deeply committed to this fight. We hope he uses his bully pulpit to shine the light on student debt and encourage our Republican colleagues to act. In sum, the President has achieved a great deal over the past 7 years and put this country on a path to succeed in the last year of his presidency and beyond. We're looking forward to his speech and to a successful year ahead.
Senator Murray.
Well, as you know, tonight the President is going to talk about the progress that we have made since the Great Recession and lay out a vision for how that progress can continue. And he's going to call on us in Congress to keep working with him to make that vision a reality. So I join my colleagues today in saying Democrats are ready to keep up the work, and we are hoping that Republicans are as well. We've taken some important steps for families over the past few years, from the bipartisan budget bills that have restored investments in middle-class priorities, to finally fixing the broken No Child Left Behind law, to cutting taxes for our working families. But we know our constituents are expecting us to keep that work going, making college more affordable so students can graduate free from the crushing burden of student loan debt, restoring economic security and increasing incomes for workers and families, and continuing to expand access to health care and to make coverage more affordable and higher quality, and so much more. Tonight's speech is going to be about the future of our great country, and Democrats are ready to keep working here in Congress to make sure that future works for families and the middle class.
Yes.
House Democrats, including Steny Hoyer, are sending a letter to President Obama to demand an end to the deportation raids that are targeting Central American families with children. I wondered if you agree with them that these raids should cease.
I spoke to the Secretary of Homeland Security at 12:30 today, and he understands the concern we have, and I think we're moving forward to a resolution of this. I think you're going to find a pause in these deportations.
Do you think that'll be announced tonight?
I don't know.
Senator McConnell has sort of played down the idea of doing big deals with the President and with Democrats this year. He's setting expectations pretty low.
What do you mean this year?
Do you disagree with him? Do you think you guys could do more? Is there
Of course we can, and we proved that last year. We were able to get a lot of things done. Why? Because we're a responsible minority. We're willing to work with them. Virtually everything that we passed could have been passed years before if we hadn't had to file 500 cloture petitions to stop their obstruction. So the answer is yes, of course we can get some big things done, and there are a lot of big things we should get done. Do I think the Republicans will suddenly change and become a responsible majority to work with the President of the United States? I doubt it, but I hope I'm wrong.
Trade is a big part of President Obama's legacy, or he hopes it will be. Will you help him get the GDP done this year?
No.
That's pretty critical.